The city lights at night were a spilled paint palette, chaotic but buzzing with a strange kind of energy. I felt pretty much the same. A project had just cratered, and not before the rival team got in a few passive-aggressive jabs that left a bad taste in my mouth. I had a full-blown inferno of frustration burning in my gut with nowhere to go. So I cranked the wheel and pulled into the parking garage of a quiet cocktail lounge I knew downtown. The lighting at the bar was dim, perfect for hiding the scowl I couldn't wipe off my face. I didn't order anything fancy, just a Godfather. The ice cubes clinked against the glass, a tiny, crisp sound that echoed the fraying edges of my patience. One drink down, and the agitation didn't subside. It just came in a sharper focus. I was debating a second when a woman's voice, hesitant but clear, sounded beside me. Excuse me. It looks like there aren't any other seats. Do you mind if I share this table? I looked up. She was young, dressed in a simple dress with a denim jacket thrown over it. Her face was bare of makeup, and a perfectly pitched, awkward smile played on her lips. Her eyes were bright, like they were holding back a pool of water. Not a showstopper, but there was something incredibly easy on the eyes about her. Normally, I would have said no. I was in a foul mood and didn't want the company. But looking into those eyes, some unseen force made me nod. I even grabbed my blazer off the opposite chair. Go ahead. Thanks, she said, a wave of relief washing over her face as she sat down. She ordered a mojito. We drank in our own little bubbles of silence. Mellow jazz drifted from the speakers, a backdrop to the low hum of conversation around us, which only made our corner feel quieter. Maybe it was the whiskey, or maybe it was the fact that I was bursting with things I couldn't say to anyone I knew, but I looked at the girl sipping her drink and blurted out, "You ever have one of those days where it feels like the universe is personally trying to screw you over?" She blinked, then a small smile bloomed in her eyes. She set down her glass. "Sounds like your luck ran out today." "Ran out?" "It got hit by a bus," I grumbled. I found myself venting not about the specifics of work, but about backstabbing colleagues and project going south. She didn't press for details. She just listened, nodding occasionally, or when I'd pause, murmuring a soft, "That sounds really rough," or "I get it." Her voice was low and soothing. I realized that talking to her, this complete stranger, was actually helping. The pressure in my chest was loosening its grip. I even learned her name, Mia, a nice name. One drink turned into another. I lost count of how many I had, only remembering that the conversation flowed more easily. Mia started talking more, too. We went from bad days to favorite movies, then debated which food truck had the best late-night tacos. From there, my memory gets hazy, like looking through frosted glass. A headache. It felt like a crew of tiny construction workers was having a rave inside my skull, complete with jackhammers. That was the first thing I registered as I swam back to consciousness. I forced my gritty eyes open. Unfamiliar ceiling. Unfamiliar light fixture. Wait, unfamiliar? I shot up in bed, the comforter pooling around my waist, a wave of cold air hitting my skin. I looked down. My heart didn't just drop, it plummeted. Stark. Naked. What made my heart actually stop, though, was the indentation in a mattress next to me. A mess of dark hair peeked out from under the covers, rising and falling with even breaths. It was Mia. My brain went into full-on static. What the hell happened last night? I couldn't remember a single thing after talking at the bar. Sharing a table, drinking, talking. And then what? How do we end up in a bed? I froze, not daring to move, barely daring to breathe, terrified of waking her up. My mind raced, tried to pull a single coherent thought from the blank, throbbing void of my memory. Nothing. I was so screwed. I mean, I'm no saint, but I'd never, ever done the whole drunken one-night stand thing, especially not with a girl I just met. As my panic reached its peak, the person next to me stirred. Mia rolled over, her long eyelashes fluttering. Then, those eyes that had been smiling just hours before slowly opened. Our gazes locked. The air turned to concrete. Her eyes went from sleepy to confused, and then her pupils blew wide with shock and disbelief. She instinctively clutched the comforter to her chest, shrinking away from me. Her voice was a scratchy, morning-after whisper laced with panic. "You, we." I was even more panicked than she was, my tongue twisting into a knot. Mia? Look, just let me explain. I have no idea what happened. I drank way too much. She didn't say anything. Her eyes darted down under the covers, and when they flew back up to me, her face was ghost white. Her look was a mix of accusation and, was that the anger of betrayal? Oh God, this was a nightmare. I swear I blacked out. I don't remember anything. If I knew, I never would have. Shut up, she finally said. Her voice was quiet but laced with ice. She wrapped the comforter around herself like a shield, leaving only her pale face and those wide, shamed, furious eyes exposed. Turn around. I moved like a marionette with its strings cut, stiffly turning my back to her. I heard the rustle of clothes, each soft sound landing like a hammer blow on my frayed nerves. All I wanted was to time travel to last night and punch the version of me that decided to get blackout drunk with a stranger. What the hell had I done? The room was terrifyingly quiet, filled only by the whisper of fabric and our suppressed breathing. I stared at the blank white wall, my brain still a useless sludge. I tried again to rewind. How did it get to this point? What happened after we left the lounge? Who suggested going somewhere else? Or did we just? Nothing. My memory was a movie that cut to credits, right in the middle of a scene at the bar. I'm dressed. I slowly turned back. She was fully dressed, standing by the bed and twisting the hem of her jacket between her fingers. A sliver of sunlight cut through a gap in the curtains, splitting her face into light and shadow. I couldn't read her expression, but the hard line of her jaw screamed tension and discomfort. Mia, I started, taking a deep breath to sound as sincere as possible, even though I felt like the world's biggest scumbag. I want to formally apologize for anything I might have done last night that was out of line. I was drunk, I wasn't in my right mind, but that's no excuse. She looked up, cutting me off. Her gaze was complicated, meeting mine for a second before flicking away. What's the point of saying that now? Her voice was low. It happened. She snatched her phone and purse from the nightstand, her movements hurried, as if she couldn't bear to be in the room a second longer. I'm leaving. Wait, I called out. Your number? We need to talk this out. Or, how can I make this right? The words felt hollow, even as I said them. How do you make right something like this? She paused at the door, but didn't turn around. Don't bother. Her voice was cold, deliberately distant. Let's just call it a mistake. It's better if we forget it. And with that, she practically ran out of the room, the door clicking softly behind her. I was alone, with nothing but the faint, lingering scent of her perfume in the air. I collapsed back onto the bed, burying my face in my hands, rubbing my throbbing temples. Forget it? Easy for her to say. How was I supposed to just forget this? I raked my hands through my hair in frustration and started getting dressed, feeling like a zombie. As I pulled on my pants, I reflexively checked my pockets. Wallet, phone, all there. I opened my wallet. Cards, cash, nothing seemed to be missing. A wave of relief washed over me, immediately followed by a tide of self-loathing. She clearly wasn't that kind of person. My first instinct to check if I'd been robbed was just pathetic. Dressed, I took in the unfamiliar room. Standard hotel decor, nothing personal. My eyes landed on the rumpled bed, the deep wrinkles a silent testament to the night's chaos. I walked over and clumsily tried to straighten the comforter, tried to erase the evidence, but I couldn't erase the knot in my stomach. At the front desk, the clerk gave me a professional smile. Checking out 1208, sir. Here is your security deposit. I took the cash, hesitated, then couldn't stop myself from asking the woman who was with me. The clerk's smile remained, but her eyes grew wary. I'm sorry, sir. We can't disclose information about our guests. I shut my mouth, feeling like an idiot. I took my money and walked out of the hotel lobby with heavy steps. The morning sun was blinding. I squinted, feeling like a survivor crawling out of some surreal, nightmarish dream, completely exhausted. Back in my apartment, which felt particularly empty, I threw myself onto the couch. The failure of the project and the chaos of the morning tangled together, weighing me down. I picked up my phone and opened my contacts, searching automatically. Last night at the bar, did Mia and I exchange numbers? The memory was a blur, but I had a vague impression that we had. I scrolled through my recent contacts several times. No Mia, or anyone who could be her. Did she delete me? Or was I just imagining it? I tried typing Mia into the search bar. Nothing. It looked like she was serious about turning the page and pretending none of this ever happened. I put my phone down, a strange feeling settling in my gut. Was it relief that I wouldn't have to deal with the fallout? Not really. It felt more like a weird sense of loss and guilt. I sat there for what felt like hours, until a sharp hunger pang reminded me I hadn't eaten since yesterday. I dragged myself to the kitchen and opened the fridge. A few beers and a loaf of expired bread. I sighed and pulled out my phone, about to order something on DoorDash. Just then it rang. The screen lit up with the name of my project manager, Dave Ramsey. I frowned, took a deep breath to pull myself together, and answered. "Hey, Dave." "Ethan." Dave's serious voice came through the line. "About that project yesterday. Even though it fell through, the other company gave us some feedback. I need you to come in this afternoon for a debriefing. Also, we're trying to land a new client, Stellar Innovations. Get a file ready. I want you on the team for that pitch." Stellar Innovations? I sat up straight. They were notoriously tough to work with, but landing them would be a massive win. "Got it, Dave. I'll be right there." After hanging up, I shoved the morning's disaster to the back of my mind. I couldn't lose my job. Life had to go on. I took a quick shower, changed, and headed for the office. Maybe if I just buried myself in work, I could forget about the girl named Mia and that chaotic, humiliating morning. I told myself that anyway. But as I stood in the elevator, staring at my hung-over, haggard reflection in the mirrored doors, Mia's shocked, accusing eyes floated back into my mind. Could I really forget that easily? For the next few days, I forced myself to dive into work. I researched everything I could on Stellar Innovations, their corporate structure, their business lines, their recent acquisitions. Dave was taking this pitch seriously, putting together a dedicated team with me as one of the key members. Being busy helped, but anytime I had a spare moment or saw something that reminded me of that night, a bar mojito ad, even just a girl in a simple dress, my thoughts would drift back to that messy morning, and a wave of frustration and guilt would wash over me. I even started to wonder if I should have been more insistent about getting her number, at least to properly apologize or to make sure she was really okay. She said to forget it, but how could any woman just shrug something like that off? The thought was like a tiny splinter in my mind, not deep, but always there to prick me when I least expected it. That afternoon, our team met to discuss the initial pitch for Stellar. Halfway through, Dave took a call, then addressed the room. "Good news. Stellar is very interested. Their project director is on her way over now for a preliminary discussion." Everyone looked sharp. A ripple of excitement went through the room. Their director coming here in person? That was a good sign. I straightened up, reviewing my notes. About 20 minutes later, the conference room door opened. Dave immediately stood up, his face beaming. "Director Sullivan, welcome. We're honored to have you here in person." My eyes, along with everyone else's, turned to the door. An assistant came in first, followed by a tall, impeccably dressed woman in a charcoal gray suit. Her makeup was flawless, her hair pulled back in a severe but elegant knot. She wore a professional, practiced smile, and her eyes were sharp and cool. "The pleasure is all ours, Mr. Ramsey. We're very much looking forward to a potential partnership," she said, her voice clear and steady, carrying an air of authority. The second I saw her face, it was like a bolt of lightning shot through me. I was frozen in my seat, my mind a complete blank. That face. How could I ever forget that face? The casual softness from that night was gone, replaced by a sharp, corporate polish. The warmth in her eyes had been replaced by a detached, analytical gaze. But I was 100% certain. The project director from Stellar Innovations was the same woman who had fled from my hotel room that morning. Mia. She was a director at Stellar Innovations? The shock was so immense I could barely think. I watched her shake hands with Dave, exchange pleasantries, and let her gaze sweep across the room, over every member of our team. When her eyes passed over me, they didn't linger for even a fraction of a second. She looked at me like I was a piece of furniture, a total stranger, before moving on. Did she not recognize me? Or was she pretending not to? My heart hammered against my ribs. My palms started to sweat. I instinctively lowered my head, pretending to read my notes, my mind a chaotic mess. This was too much of coincidence. This was crazier than a movie plot. Dave started introducing the team. "Director Sullivan, this is our project team. This is Lee, our lead engineer. This is Wong, our data analyst. And this is Ethan Cole, When he said my name, I had no choice but to look up and meet her gaze. I searched her face for any flicker of recognition, any sign of surprise, but there was nothing. Her expression was a perfect professional mask. She gave me a slight nod, her tone flat. Mr. Cole, a pleasure. Pleasure to meet you, Director Sullivan. I heard myself say, my voice sounding dry and distant. Director Sullivan? Her name wasn't Mia? Wait, maybe I was wrong. Could two people really look that much alike? The meeting began. Dave did most of the talking, outlining our company's proposal. Director Sullivan would occasionally interject with a question. Her tone was calm, but every question was sharp, insightful, and straight to the point. She was obviously brilliant at her job. I sat there, my mind a million miles away. I discreetly studied her. The eyebrows, the eyes, the nose, the lips. The more I looked, the more certain I was. This was Mia. Absolutely. The light in the bar had been dim, and she hadn't been wearing makeup, but the shape of her face, especially her eyes. I'd never mistake those eyes. So why was her name Sullivan? And why was she acting like she'd never seen me before? There was only one explanation. She'd used a fake name. Mia was a lie she'd told me at the bar. Director Sullivan. That was who she really was. The realization left a bitter taste in my mouth. My one-night stand had just turned into a key executive at a major potential client. And she'd lied about her name. This was a soap opera. The meeting finally ended. It had been amicable on the surface, but I had been on pins and needles the entire time. Dave warmly invited Director Sullivan to dinner, but she politely declined. Thank you for the offer, Mr. Ramsey, but I have another meeting to get to. We can schedule a time to discuss the details further, she said, standing and shaking his hand. Of course, of course. Let me walk you out. Dave escorted her and her assistant toward the door. I stood up with the rest of the team, my eyes glued to her retreating figure. At the doorway, she seemed to remember something. She stopped, turned, and her gaze found me in the crowd with unnerving accuracy. Her face was still impassive as she spoke, her voice level. Mr. Cole, is it? Regarding the technical implementation you mentioned earlier, I have a few more detailed questions. If you don't mind, could you walk me to the elevator? We could discuss it on the way. In an instant, every eye in the room, including Dave's, swiveled to me. My heart leaped into my throat. Here it comes. I forced myself to look calm, nodding. Of course, Director Sullivan. Under the curious and envious stares of my colleagues, I followed her and her assistant out of the conference room. The hallway was quiet, the only sound the crisp click of her heels on the polished floor. Her assistant tactfully fell a few steps behind. When we reached the elevator bay, she pressed the down button, then turned to face me. The professional calm she'd worn in the meeting was gone. Her eyes were chips of ice, her voice low and tight with a fury I could feel. Mr. Cole, she said, each word a carefully enunciated threat. I hope this is the first and last time we speak privately. That night was a complete and utter mistake. I need you to forget it. Immediately. Do not let it affect this project. And do not, under any circumstances, mention it to me or anyone else at my company. Ever. Or else. She didn't finish the sentence, but the warning in her eyes was crystal clear. The elevator chimed, the doors sliding open. She gave me one last, cold glare before stepping inside, her assistant right behind her. The doors slid shut, cutting off the sight of her beautiful, furious face. I stood alone in the empty hallway, watching the floor number light up and start its descent, a whirlwind of emotions churning inside me. A mistake? Forget it. I rubbed my nose, a bitter, self-deprecating smile twisting my lips. Yeah, right. This was far from over. Being warned off like that so bluntly, I stood there by the elevators, feeling like someone had just dumped a bucket of ice water over my head. The chills seeped right down to my bones. Her last look, that cold, threatening glare, and her words echoed in my mind. She didn't just remember me. She wanted nothing to do with me, so much so that she'd use her professional authority to threaten me into silence. Any small, strange flutter of excitement I'd felt at the coincidence was instantly extinguished, replaced by a complex cocktail of humiliation, frustration, and a flicker of defiance. When I got back to my desk, my coworkers swarmed me. Ethan, nice one. Getting singled out by Director Sullivan already. What did she talk to you about? Did she like our proposal? Man, you've got some luck. getting one-on-one time with a director that gorgeous. I forced a smile and mumbled something vague. Nothing much, just some technical questions. She's all business. I didn't want to talk about it. I sat down and pretended to be engrossed in my computer screen. My mind, however, was anything but calm. I kept replaying her performance in the conference room. Poised, professional, radiating authority. It was like she was a different person from the girl at the bar with the slightly awkward smile who had listened to me complain. Which one was the real her? Or were they both just parts of a whole? And she was clearly terrified of that night coming to light. The threat made that obvious. It had to be because of her position. A young, successful director at Stellar Innovations. A scandal about a one-night stand with an employee from a potential vendor would be disastrous for her career. Thinking about it that way, my defiance softened a little, but the sting of humiliation remained. I wasn't some creep, but she was treating me like I was radioactive and warning me off to my face. That hurt. The next few days were a blur of intense work. Stellar sent back their feedback quickly, demanding a more detailed proposal. As the lead on the technical side, I poured all my time and energy into it. We had another meeting at their offices. She was there. Throughout the entire meeting, she remained impeccably professional and distant. Aside from necessary work-related questions, she never looked at me, never betrayed a hint of personal feeling. I played along, keeping it strictly business, as if we really were just two professionals meeting for the first time. But I could feel it. Underneath her deliberate ignorance was a tense, coiled vigilance. Like an animal that senses danger, she had all her quills up. This weird dynamic continued until we reached the final stages of the proposal. Dave organized an internal review, a dress rehearsal for the big pitch. I was responsible for presenting the core technology section. I was well prepared, my presentation clear and logical. After I finished, Dave nodded, satisfied. Excellent, Ethan. That section is solid, but there's one think we can refine a bit. After the meeting, I stayed late to incorporate his feedback. Before I knew it, the office was dark and empty. The only sound was the clicking of my keyboard. I stretched, rubbing my tired eyes, and was about to pack up when my phone lit up. A friend request on WhatsApp. I picked it up and tapped on the notification. The username was a simple S. The profile picture was the default gray silhouette. The request message was just 3 cryptic words. Look out your window. I froze for a second, then instinctively turned to the floor-to-ceiling window of my office. Outside, the city was a glittering tapestry of lights. My office was on the 18th floor, with a clear view of the skyline. Nothing out of the ordinary. I frowned, thinking it was a prank call or a wrong number. I was about to ignore it when my finger paused. S. Sullivan. An absurd thought popped into my head. Could it be her? I hesitated, then tapped accept. The moment I did, a message came through. S. You're still at the office? S. Look up. At the building across the street. My heart skipped a beat. I looked again, this time focusing on the office building opposite mine, the one that housed Stellar Innovations. Most of its floors were dark, but a few windows were still lit. My eyes scanned the lit windows and finally settled on one. Behind the glass, I could just make out the silhouette of a person. Too far to see a face, but I had a powerful gut feeling. It was her. I grabbed my phone and typed back. Ethan, Director Sullivan, S. Image attachment. The photo was clearly taken with a phone through a window aimed directly in my building and my specific still-lit office. It was a bit blurry, but I could clearly see the shape of a person sitting at my desk, hunched over a laptop. It was me. A jolt went through me. I looked across at her window. The silhouette moved, holding something. Was she taking pictures of me? Ethan, are you spying on me? S. Was just leaving. So your light was still on. S. You work hard, Mr. Cole. I stared at the screen, unsure how to respond. What was this? First, she warned me to stay away, and now she's sending me cryptic late-night texts and taking pictures of me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard. Ethan, looks like you're working pretty late yourself, Director. S. A project deadline. Ethan, S. The conversation stalled. I waited. I had a feeling she didn't add me, just to exchange pleasantries about her work habits. Sure enough, after a long pause, the typing bubble appeared and disappeared a few times before a new message came through. S. That morning, I wasn't very fair to you. It was all so sudden. I kind of Lost my cool. I stared at the message, stunned. I never expected the ice-cold director Sullivan to bring up that morning, let alone apologize for her attitude. This was completely unexpected. I chose my words carefully. Ethan, it's understandable. I was outlined too. I drank way too much. I apologize again for my behavior. No need. Like I said, it was a mistake. But it's a mistake that needs to stay in that hotel room. At work, we are nothing more than colleagues on opposite sides of a deal. Her meaning was clear. An apology was one thing, but the boundary was not moving. The flicker of something strange I'd felt moments before died down again. I typed back a single word. Ethan, understood. She didn't reply after that. I looked up at the window across the way. The silhouette was gone. The light in her office was off. She was gone. I stared at the simple S on my phone screen, a strange mix of feelings churning inside me. The fallout from this mistake was turning out to be a lot more complicated than I ever could have imagined. After that late-night text exchange, my interactions with Director Sullivan, I found out her first name was Hannah from an internal email chain, settled into a strange kind of equilibrium. On the surface, everything was strictly professional. Our communication was limited to emails and formal meetings. Hannah's demeanor was still that of a cool, detached executive, as if her brief, almost vulnerable apology had never happened. But I could feel a subtle shift. The tense, almost hostile vigilance was gone. At least now, she didn't look at me like I was a ticking time bomb. The project moved forward, entering its final, crucial phase. Our teams had to meet frequently to iron out the details. One afternoon, the meeting was at our office and dragged on until well after sunset. As we were wrapping up, the sky opened up. A torrential downpour started, hammering against the windows. "Wow, look at that rain," Dave said, peering outside. "Director Sullivan, why don't I have the company driver take you home?" Hannah was gathering her files. "That's very kind, Mr. Ramsey, but there's no need. I can just get an Uber." "You'll have a hard time getting one in this weather," Dave insisted. He glanced around. "Ethan, you drove, right? Why don't you give Director Sullivan a lift?" I froze mid-motion, stuffing my laptop into my bag. I looked up and my eyes met Hannah's. A flicker of something, resistance maybe, crossed her face before she masked it. "Really, it's no trouble," she said, trying to decline again. I knew she didn't want to be alone with me outside of work. I wasn't exactly eager for an awkward car ride myself, but looking at the sheets of rain and the heavy briefcase in her hand, I found myself speaking up. "Director, with this weather, you'll be waiting for a ride for at least an hour. My car's in the garage downstairs. It's no trouble, really." Dave jumped in to support me. "There you go. Let Ethan drive you. Safety first. You two can even talk about that last technical point on the way. Ethan, you make sure the director gets home safe." With both of us insisting, it would have been rude to refuse again. Hannah was silent for a moment, then finally gave a small nod, her voice quiet. "All right. Thank you, Mr. Cole." "No problem," I said, grabbing my keys. We rode the elevator down to the parking garage in a heavy silence. My car, a standard black SUV, was reasonably clean. I opened the passenger door for her. After a slight hesitation, she murmured a thank you and slid in. The confined space of the car seemed to amplify her presence. The faint, clean scent she wore, something classier than perfume, was more noticeable now. I felt a little awkward and cleared my throat as I started the engine. The windshield wipers fought a losing battle against the deluge. Traffic was crawling, headlights blurring into halos in the rain-streaked darkness. The silence in the car was thick, broken only by the rhythmic squeak of the wipers and the hum of the engine. The awkwardness was getting to be too much. I cleared my throat, searching for something to say. "Crazy rain, huh?" She replied, looking out her window. "So about that data interface issue we were discussing. Let's save work talk for the office tomorrow," she cut in, her tone polite but firm, drawing a clear line. My attempt at conversation shot down. I shut my mouth and focused on driving. The visibility was terrible. At a red light, I gently braked, the tires hissing through a deep puddle. Suddenly, a car from the next lane swerved, trying to cut in front of me at the last second. "Watch out!" Hannah gasped, her body tensing. My reflexes kicked in. I jerked the wheel and tapped the brake, narrowly avoiding a collision. The other car sped off, horn blaring. "You okay?" I asked, steadying the car and glancing over at her. Her face was pale. The near miss had clearly shaken her. She nodded, her voice a little tight. I'm fine. Her knuckles were white where she gripped the seatbelt. I noticed the small gesture. The invincible director Sullivan got scared just like anyone else. Don't worry, I said, try to lighten the mood. I'm a pretty good driver. She glanced at me, not saying anything, but I saw her shoulders relax just a little. We drove the rest of the way in silence. But after that little jolt of adrenaline, the tension in the car seemed to have dissipated slightly. Following her directions, I pulled up to the gate of a sleek, modern apartment building. You can just stop here. Thank you, she said, unbuckling her seatbelt. Okay, be careful, it's slippery out there. She opened her door, popped an umbrella, and hurried through the gate, disappearing into the manicured grounds of the complex. I watched until she was out of sight, only snapping out of it when the car behind me honked. I put the car in drive and merged back into traffic. Her scent seemed to linger in the car. I shook my head, trying to clear it of any stupid ideas. It was just a favor for a colleague. A ride home. That's all. So why did I have this strange, unsettled feeling in my chest? The project reached its climax, the final presentation. This meeting would decide everything. Senior executives from both companies would be there. The pressure was immense. Our team had been working around the clock, polishing every slide, anticipating every possible question. As the lead technical presenter, most of the weight was on my shoulders. The night before, I was in the conference room alone, practicing my part until my voice was raw. My throat was dry, and my mind was buzzing from hours of intense focus. I reached for my water bottle and found it empty. I got up to head to the break room. Walking through the deserted office, I noticed a single light on at a temporary workstation near the hallway. Was that Hannah's desk? The Stellar team had been co-working from our office for the past few days. Was she still here? I paused, then, against my better judgment, I changed course and walked toward the light. She was hunched over a laptop, brow furrowed in concentration. The glow from her desk lamp softened the sharp lines of her face, making her look less like a formidable director and more like just a person tired and stressed. She must have heard me approach because she looked up. Surprise flickered in her eyes when she saw me, quickly replaced by her usual neutral expression. Mr. Cole, you're still here. Just running through my part one last time, I said, holding up my empty bottle, getting some water. You're working late too. Just double-checking the final data sets for tomorrow, she said, rubbing the bridge of her nose. I could see the fatigue in her eyes. I noticed her own water glass was empty and her lips looked a little dry. Want some water? I can grab you a glass. She seemed taken aback by the offer. She glanced at her empty glass, then back at me. After a moment's hesitation, she nodded. Thank you. I went to the break room and returned with 2 glasses of water, placing one on her desk. Thanks, she murmured, taking a sip. Another silence fell between us. But this time it wasn't awkward. It felt more like a shared moment of camaraderie. 2 soldiers in the trenches before a big battle. How's the presentation looking? She asked, her eyes still on her screen, as if it were a casual afterthought. I think it's ready, I said, leaning against the cubicle wall next to her desk. All we can do now is perform. Your section is critical, she said, her fingers tracing a line on her laptop's trackpad. Her tone was flat, but her next word surprised me. Your logic is sound, and you have a real talent for explaining complex concepts. If you just deliver it like you practiced, you'll be fine. Was she complimenting me? I was genuinely surprised. I looked at her, still focused on her screen, and suddenly felt like I was seeing a different side of her again. Underneath the icy, protective shell, she was just a person who worked hard, felt the pressure, and could appreciate good work from a colleague. Thanks, I said, a genuine smile forming. And thank you for staying late to make sure we're all set for tomorrow. Her fingers paused on the keyboard. Without looking up, she said simply, it's my job. I looked at her, and the question that had been bouncing around in my head for weeks finally came out. That night at the bar. Why did you use the name Mia? The air crackled. Her hand stopped moving completely. She lifted her head and looked at me, her expression a complex mix of surprise, annoyance, and a flash of vulnerability like I just touched a raw nerve. Does it matter? She asked, her voice turning cold again. No, I said, holding her gaze. I was just curious. The woman who listened to me complain about my job and debated taco trucks with me seems very different from the director Sullivan I see at work. She stared at me, her lips pressed into a thin line, as if trying to decipher my motives. After a long moment, she looked back at her computer, her voice tinged with a weariness I'd never heard before. Everyone needs a break from reality sometimes. That night, I just want to be a stranger, have a quiet drink. She paused, then added, her voice laced with self-deprecation. Unfortunately, I picked the wrong night. Her last words stung. I knew what she meant. Her bad luck was meeting me and stumbling into this whole mess. I rubbed the back of my neck, feeling a mix of awkwardness and understanding. So that was it. She was just another overworked professional trying to escape for a few hours and had ended up in an even more stressful situation. I get it, I said, nodding. I drained my glass. Well, I won't keep you. You should get some rest too. Tomorrow, break a leg. With that, I turned and walked away. As I disappeared around the corner, Hannah slowly looked up from her screen. She stared at the empty space where I had been standing. Her gaze fell to the glass of water on her desk, the condensation cool against her hand when she picked it up. She thought of my tired but determined eyes and my final words of encouragement. A heavily fortified wall around her heart seemed to crack, just a little, but only for a moment. She took a deep breath, forcing her focus back to the numbers on the screen. Tomorrow was the day. The final presentation was held in the main boardroom at Stellar Innovations. Their CEO, VP, and all the key department heads were there. The atmosphere was formal and tense. I sat at the presenter's table, my palms sweating in my perfectly pressed suit. I could feel a calm, steady gaze from across the room. Hannah, sitting among the Stellar executives, her expression unreadable. Dave gave the introduction, and then it was my turn. I took a deep breath, picked up the laser pointer, and walked to the front of the room. I started strong, my voice even, my points clear. I was breaking down complex technical specs into understandable concepts. The executives seemed engaged, nodding and taking notes. Then, just as I reached the most critical part of my presentation, the performance optimization, disaster struck. The projector flickered twice, and the screen went black. A murmur went through the room. My stomach dropped. A technical failure? Now, Dave's face paled. He immediately signaled for the IT guy to come fix it. I stood there, my mind racing. Switching to a backup would take time, disrupt the flow, and make us look unprofessional. My eyes instinctively found Hannah's. Her brow was furrowed, but there was no panic in her eyes. She gave me a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Her look said one thing: stay calm. In that split second, I made a decision. I put down a laser pointer, turned to the executives, and offered a disarming smile. Apologies, everyone. It seems our technology is having a moment. But that's all right, I said, tapping my temple with my finger, my voice confident and relaxed. The most important parts are all up here. If you'll allow me, I'll continue without the slides. I walked over to the whiteboard. Relying purely on memory and a deep understanding of the material, I started sketching out data flows and system architecture, explaining each component as I went. Freed from the script of the PowerPoint, my delivery became more dynamic, more engaging. I use analogies, I simplified complex ideas, and I showed them not just what we would do, but how we would think. The CEO, a stern-faced man in his 50s, began to look genuinely interested. At one point, when I explained a particularly elegant solution, I saw him nod in approval. From her seat, Hannah watched me, a flicker of surprise in her eyes that slowly morphed into something I could only describe as admiration. She hadn't expected me to handle the crisis this well, to not just survive it, but to thrive in it. The IT tech finally got the projector working again, but I didn't switch back. I finished my entire section at the whiteboard, my explanation seamless and powerful. When I put the marker down and gave a slight bow, the room erupted in applause. The Stellar CEO led it himself. Excellent, he said, looking at Dave. Mr. Ramsey, your young engineer here is not only technically brilliant, but his composure and adaptability are top-notch. A real rising star. Dave was beaming, clapping me on the back as I returned to my seat, my own heart still pounding from the adrenaline. I could feel the sweat soaking through the back of my shirt. The rest of the meeting was a breeze. We aced the Q&A session. It was a home run. The CEO gave his verbal agreement to the partnership on the spot. As we filed out of the boardroom, Dave was ecstatic. "You killed it, kid. You absolutely killed it. We're celebrating tonight." My treat. My teammates surrounded me, congratulating me, but my eyes were searching for one person. Hannah was walking ahead with her assistant, speaking in low tones. As she reached the corner of the hallway, she paused and looked back. Her eyes found mine across the crowded corridor. We held each other's gaze for a beat longer than usual. And then I saw it. The corner of her mouth tilted up in a tiny, almost invisible smile. Her eyes weren't cold or professional anymore. They held a clear, genuine look of approval and warmth. It was gone in a flash, so quick I almost thought I'd imagined it. But I knew I hadn't. My heart gave a little jump, a feeling of triumph washing over me that was far more powerful than the CEO's praise. She had smiled at me, even if it was just a little. The celebration dinner was at a high-end restaurant. Key members from both teams were there, including Hannah and her assistant. The mood was jubilant. Dave, playing the gracious host, was in high spirits, making toasts left and right. As the man of the hour, I was the target of many of those toasts. My alcohol tolerance was average at best, but I was happy, and the wine flowed freely. My face was flushed. Hannah, as the client representative, couldn't avoid a few toasts herself. She seemed to be a lightweight. After a few sips of red wine, a delicate pink blush colored her cheeks, softening her features under the warm lights. She was quiet for most of the dinner, listening to the loud conversations, offering a polite smile when spoken to. Even surrounded by my celebrating colleagues, my attention kept drifting to her. I noticed how she barely touched her wine, how she tucked a stray strand of hair behind her ear, how the flush on her cheeks deepened when she laughed at one of Dave's jokes. My heart was beating a little too fast. I blamed the wine. Later in the evening, I excused myself to the restroom, needing a break from the noise. In the quiet hallway, I splashed cold water on my face, staring at my reflection in the mirror. All I could see was Hannah's fleeting smile. I shook my head, trying to get a grip. She'd warned me. The deal was just starting. I couldn't. Walking out of the restroom, I stopped. Hannah was standing at the end of the hall, by a large window, looking out at the city lights. Her silhouette looked slender and a little lonely. I hesitated, then walked toward her. She turned at the sound of my footsteps, not looking surprised to see me. "It was getting a little loud in there," I said, standing beside her and looking out the window. She agreed. We stood in a comfortable silence, the muffled sounds of the party a distant backdrop. "Hey, thank you," I said suddenly. She turned to me, a question in her eyes. "For what?" "For the nod," I said. "When the projector died. If you hadn't given me that look, I probably would have panicked." She seemed to understand. She turned back to the window. "That was all you. Your quick thinking had nothing to do with me." "It did," I insisted. "That nod was everything." She was quiet for a moment. "You were brilliant," she said softly. The part without the slides was even better than the presentation. Her voice was low, and for the first time, it held no professional distance. A warmth spread through my chest. Hearing that from her meant more than anything else that had happened today. I was terrified, actually, I admitted with a self-deprecating laugh. My back was soaked with sweat. A real, genuine smile touched her lips this time. I could tell. "Your hands were shaking a little. Was it that obvious?" I asked, rubbing the back of my neck. "Just a little," she said, the smile still lingering in her eyes. Looking at her, so relaxed and open, the thought I'd been suppressing for weeks pushed its way to the surface. I looked at her wine-flushed cheeks and asked softly, "So, am I still Mr. Cole?" The smile on her face faded slightly. She knew what I was asking. Was there a possibility for something more, now that we were away from the office, sharing this quiet moment? She looked down, her long eyelashes hiding her expression. The dim hallway light cast shadows on her face. Just as I thought she was going to shut me down again, she looked up, her eyes full of a complex emotion, and her voice, though quiet, was perfectly clear. "Ethan." She said my name. Not Cole. Ethan. Hearing it from her lips felt strangely intimate. My heart felt like it was going to beat out of my chest. I watched the indecision, the struggle in her eyes, and an impulse I couldn't control took over. I took a step closer. She instinctively leaned back against the cold glass of the window, a flicker of alarm in her eyes, but she didn't move away. We were so close, I could feel the warmth of her breath, smell the faint, clean scent of her hair, mixed with a hint of wine. I looked down at her, my voice raspy with nerves and hope. So, what should I call you? Hannah? Or Mia? She looked up at me, her chest rising and falling quickly. Her eyes darted back and forth, as if she were having an intense internal debate. Finally, with a soft, almost inaudible sigh, she closed her eyes. Whatever you want. Those 3 words were all the permission I needed. I leaned down and kissed her. Her lips were soft and cool from the wine. Her body was stiff for a second, but then her hand, which had been resting on my arm, tightened its grip. She didn't push me away. Outside the window, the city lights glittered silently, witnesses to the kiss that changed everything. On one side of the door was a loud, boisterous party. But here, in the quiet hallway, was a new beginning. Uncertain, risky, but overwhelmingly tempting. That kiss in the hallway opened a new chapter, but it didn't magically solve everything. It was less a clear path forward and more a tentative step into a gray area between mistake and colleagues. The next day at the office, Hannah was back to her professional self, as if the person who'd softened in my arms was just a dream. But I noticed the small things. She no longer looked at me with suspicion. Sometimes, during meetings, her gaze would linger on me for a moment too long, and she stopped actively avoiding being alone with me. Though when we were, the air was still thick with a charged, unspoken tension. I didn't push it. I knew that for someone like her, even acknowledging this quiet, simmering thing between us was a huge step. I needed to be patient. The project moved into a smoother phase, with less need for late nights and high-stakes meetings. Our interactions became mostly professional again. Then, one Friday afternoon, a message from S popped up on my phone. S, are you free tonight? My heart did a little flip. Ethan, I am. What's up? S, I need you to go somewhere with me. Ethan, where? S, you'll see when we get there. After work, I followed the address she sent me to an older neighborhood on the west side of the city. It was quieter here, the streets lined with huge sycamore trees that canopied over charming little shops. I parked and waited. A few minutes later, Hannah got out of a rideshare. She was dressed down in a simple white t-shirt and jeans, her hair in a loose ponytail. Without makeup, she looked younger, more like the Mia I'd first met at the bar. You made it, she said, her tone easy and casual. Here I am, I said, curious. So, where are we going? Just follow me. She turned and led the way down a quiet side street. We ended up in front of a small, unassuming shop with a hand-painted wooden sign that read, The Knitted Bear Nook. A knitted bear nook? Hannah pushed the door open and went inside. The shop was cozy, bathed in warm light. Shelves everywhere were filled with adorable, hand-knitted teddy bears of all shapes and colors. The air smelled of yarn and lavender. An elderly woman with kind eyes and a head of white hair sat behind the counter, knitting a small pink bear. Hannah, dear, you're here, she said, her face lighting up. Her eyes shifted to me. And you brought a friend today? Hi, Mrs. Gable, Hannah said, a shy, relaxed smile on her face that I'd never seen before. I wanted him to see the place. She turned to me. Mrs. Gable makes all these by hand. I like to come here when I'm stressed out. Just looking at the bears helps. Her voice got softer. The night we met. I just come from here. I looked at her, and suddenly it all clicked into place. This warm, whimsical little shop was her sanctuary, the one place she could let all her guards down. And Mia wasn't a lie, not really. It was the part of her that existed here, in this haven, away from the crushing pressure of her corporate life. I looked around at the sweet, silent bears, then back at the woman beside me, who seemed like a completely different person. A wave of tenderness washed over me. They're amazing, I said softly, my eyes on her face. She seemed a little embarrassed and turned to examine a bear with a tiny blue bow tie. Mrs. Gable smiled knowingly at us. Hannah's a wonderful girl, she said to me. Hannah's a wonderful girl, she said to me. She just keeps herself wound up too tight. It's good that you're here with her. I smiled back, my chest feeling full. I watched Hannah trace the stitches on the little bear, the light catching in her eyelashes. In that moment, I knew this wasn't about guilt or curiosity anymore. I was genuinely falling for this woman, with her ironclad armor and her secret, soft heart. We left the shop as dusk settled, finding a quiet little diner for dinner. The atmosphere was more relaxed than it had ever been. Hannah even told me a few funny stories about work, her guard finally, truly down. "Thank you for coming with me tonight," she said as we walked back to my car. "Thank you for showing me," I said, looking at her, "for letting me see a different side of you." She met my gaze, her eyes shining in the dim light. "Ethan, I've been so conflicted. I know. That night was a mistake. Warning you off was fear. Fear for my job, for my reputation, fear of everything." She spoke slowly, carefully, but then seeing you at the presentation, seeing you handle everything. I don't know. I guess I'm not as scared anymore. She took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. "We can try this. But at work, nothing can change. And I don't want anyone to know. Not yet." My heart hammered in my chest. This was it. This was the opening I'd been waiting for. "Okay," I said, my voice firm, my eyes locked on hers. "I understand. At work, we're colleagues. And this is just for us. I can do that." A real, genuine smile spread across her face. "Okay. Goodbye, Ethan." "Goodbye," I smiled back, Hannah. This time, saying her name felt like coming home. I watched her taxi drive away, feeling like the moon had never looked so bright. Try. It was a beautiful word. Try launched us into a secret, thrilling chapter of our lives. At the office, we were masters of discretion, maintaining a perfect professional distance. To the outside world, we were just two colleagues who worked well together. But in private, everything was different. We had secret dates on weekends. We'd see late movies, our hands intertwined in the dark. We'd find tiny, hole-in-the-wall restaurants and share a bowl of noodles. Mostly, though, we'd hang out in my apartment. I'd play video games while she read dense business books, or knitted. She'd actually started learning from Mrs. Gable. Her first few bears were lopsided monstrosities, but she loved it. I loved watching her, her brow furrowed in concentration as she counted stitches. I learned all her secrets, that she was scared of the dark and slept with a nightlight, that she had a massive sweet tooth but was always too professional to indulge in the office bake sales, that she was a powerhouse at work but a little absent-minded at home, constantly misplacing her keys. I'd always find them for her, and she'd give me this look, a mix of exasperation and affection, that made my heart melt. It wasn't always perfect. Her work habits sometimes bled into our personal life. She'd slip into director mode, giving orders instead of making suggestions. At first it bothered me, but I learned to gently tease her out of it. "Director Sullivan," I'd say with a grin, "it's after 6 p.m. Time to clock out." She'd always blush and relax. Our secret felt precious, like a delicate plant growing in the cracks of a concrete world. The secrecy itself added a layer of excitement to everything. But you can't keep a secret that big forever. The project concluded with a massive signing ceremony and celebratory gala. It was a huge industry event. Hannah and I both had to be there. We navigated the party like pros, exchanging polite nods and brief, professional smiles, the secret thrumming between us. At one point, I stepped out onto the terrace to take a call. Just as I was finishing, Hannah came out for a breath of fresh air. We smiled at each other, the first real smile of the night, but before we could speak, the curtain to the terrace swished open. It was Mark Thompson, a VP from Stellar. He was known for being sleazy and had always paid a little too much attention to Hannah. He saw us, standing alone, and a smirk spread across his face. Well, Director Sullivan, Mr. Cole, sharing secrets out here." Hannah's expression immediately turned to ice. "It was getting stuffy inside, Mark. I was just getting some air." I nodded politely. "Mr. Thompson." His eyes darted between us. "You two certainly made a great team on this project. A real power couple, if you ask me." The insinuation was clear. Hannah's jaw tightened. "Mark, you've been drinking. We have a professional relationship. That's all." "Is it?" he slurred, stepping closer to her. "Hannah, a friendly piece of advice. The board is looking to promote a new VP. You're on the short list. It'd be a shame if some unfortunate rumors started making the rounds right about now." It was a blatant threat. He was using her career against her. The color drained from Hannah's face. A hot rage flared in my chest, but I held it back. I stepped smoothly between them, my smile polite but my eyes hard. Mr. Thompson, you don't have to worry. Director Sullivan and I are both professionals. The project's success was due to teamwork. Anything else is pure fantasy. My firm, calm response seemed to throw him off. He grumbled something under his breath and retreated back into the party. The terrace was silent again, but the mood was ruined. Hannah was staring at the ground, her shoulders trembling with fury and humiliation. I wanted to hold her, but I couldn't. Not here. I'm sorry, I said quietly. This is my fault. She looked up, her eyes flashing. No, it's not your fault that men like him exist. She took a shaky breath, her resolve returning. But he's right about one thing. This is a critical time for me. We need to cool it for a while. Her words were like a punch to the gut. I knew she was right, but it still hurt. Okay, I heard myself say. I understand. For the rest of the night, we didn't speak. I watched her work the room, a perfect picture of grace and control, and my heart ached for the vulnerable woman I'd just seen on the terrace. The days that followed were miserable. We barely texted. We didn't see each other. It felt like she was a million miles away. I hated it. I hated feeling helpless while she dealt with the pressure alone. I hated that our relationship had to hide in the shadows. I wanted to stand by her side, out in the open. That thought took root and wouldn't let go. A few days later, I drove to her apartment building without telling her. I sat in my car, looking up at her lighted window, and called her. Hello. Her voice was tired. I'm downstairs. There was a pause. What? Why? We agreed. I need to see you, I said, my voice firm. Come down, or I'm coming up. Wait there. 10 minutes later, she hurried out, wrapped in a cardigan. She slid into the passenger seat, frowning. Ethan, what's wrong? I just looked at her. She looked exhausted. Hannah, I said, my voice serious. Let's go public. She stared at me. What? I'm done hiding, I said, my gaze intense. I am done letting jerks like Thompson make you feel like you have to choose between me and your career. I want to be with you for real. I want to be able to pick you up from work and stand up for you when someone gives you crap, not just watch from the sidelines. I took her hand. It was cold. I know you're worried, but you are brilliant enough to get that promotion on your own merit. You don't need to sacrifice your happiness for it. And you have me. I'll work harder. I'll be better. I'll become someone who deserves to stand next to you, so you never have to feel ashamed or pressured for choosing me. She just stared at me, her eyes wide, my words hanging in the air between us. Her hand, held tight in mine, felt like an anchor. I could see the walls she'd built around her heart begin to crumble. She'd always been so strong, so independent. But hearing me say that, seeing the absolute conviction in my eyes, she didn't have to be strong alone anymore. Her eyes welled up with tears. She squeezed my hand back, her voice thick with emotion. Are you sure? There will be gossip. It could affect. I'm sure, I said, cutting her off. Whatever happens, we face it together. As long as you're with me, I'm not backing down. She looked at me for a long, long moment. Then, a slow, watery, beautiful smile spread across her face. It was the most honest smile I'd ever seen from her. Okay, one word, but it meant everything. Overcome with joy, I pulled her in my arms, holding her so tight I never wanted to let go. Outside the car, the city lights blurred into a soft glow, silent witnesses to the moment we chose to stop hiding and start fighting for a future together. Epilogue. 3 months later, the official announcement came down. Hannah Sullivan was promoted to Vice President of Stellar Innovations. At the ceremony, she was poised, brilliant, and confident. The rumors about her and the engineer from the partner company had surfaced, but they died down just as quickly. Hannah's talent and hard work were undeniable. Success was the best defense. And me? I've been given my own major project to lead. Things are looking up. Tonight, I took Hannah's hand and led her back to the cocktail lounge where it all began. We sat in the same corner booth. Recognize this place? I asked, grinning. Hannah, my Hannah, rolled her eyes playfully. Of course. This is where some unlucky guy was drowning his sorrows and got ambushed by a stranger. Luckiest day of my life, I whispered, leaning in. How else would I have found you? She swatted my arm, but she was blushing. We ordered a Godfather and a mojito. Our glasses clinked. I have something for you, I said, sliding a small box across the table. She opened it. Inside wasn't a ring, but a lopsided, clumsily made, knitted bear keychain. A small red H was stitched crookedly onto its chest. "Did you?" she asked, her voice full of wonder as she picked up the ugly, cute little bear. "I've been taking secret lessons from Mrs. Gable," I admitted, scratching the back of my head. "It's not very good, but I was hoping it could hold your keys for you. And maybe you could hold on to me, too." Hannah looked from the lumpy little bear, so full of heartfelt effort, to my hopeful, nervous face. Her eyes shone. She clutched the bear tightly in her hand and nodded, her voice choked with happy tears. Okay. Outside, the night was soft and quiet. Inside, I was with the woman I loved. A chaotic, drunken mistake had somehow, miraculously, become the sweetest thing in my life. Our story was just beginning. End.